don't know what information got from Uvalde 911 to the school district police chief. In the critical moments, officers were told not to enter the classroom. But answers like this about when we'll know, well, they make a bad situation worse.
Whenever this is done and let the families quit grieving, then we'll do that, obviously.
So that's the school district police chief, and now Uvalde City Council member, Pete Arredondo. Now, my next guest has a unique perspective about the situation the chief now finds himself in. His name, Mark Eiglarsh, representing Scot Peterson. Remember, he's the former school resource officer who is still awaiting trial over what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018. Welcome to the show. Nice to talk to you today. And I've been eager to speak with you in particular.
Laura, I appreciate it.
I'm glad you're here, Mark. I'm eager to talk to you because there's a lot of questions that we need answers to. And yet, of all the people who've been involved in this incident and the response to this tragedy, there's only one name we keep hearing. And when I talk about the need to have the answers, I'm not being reductive about the need just to point fingers and blame a person and then tie it up with a neat bow. I actually want the scope of the answers. And you represent somebody who has found himself under a microscope where people have asked for those answers, have wanted to prosecute. Tell me a little bit about what you think is going on right now with this chief in the sense of what it would look like to find yourself under the microscope with so many answers still lingering.
All right, first let me just say to the families, my heart goes out to all of them, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I have 3 children, and I can't imagine what they must be going through. If I'm them, and I'm in this predicament, I would demand answers, and I'd want those answers quick. But what I've learned through my own involvement with the Peterson case is those quick answers are also the least accurate. The only answers that you can rely upon are ones that come after an extensive and thorough investigation. That has not been done. So we're all yelling, we want answers, we demand answers. And anytime a police chief or anybody says, we will get you those answers, let us do a thorough investigation, that's not good enough. There seems to be this war on cops where there's the good guys and the bad guys, and regardless of what the investigation may show, we need a villain right away. We want to pick up our pitchforks, and we have a war on first responders. And I'm here to say that that's truly unfair to the dedicated men and women who get up every morning and leave their families not knowing if they're going to return to their households. And they go out there and fight for us to put their lives on the line. They deserve a thorough investigation first. And if they've done anything wrong, that's fine. They could be condemned for it at some point and maybe even jailed for it. But let's just wait.
Well, here's the obvious retort to that notion. And I do echo the sentiment that there are so many brave men and women in law enforcement who are fighting to make sure, just as they would like to return home this evening, that others who are relying on them will be able to return home in the evening. And what we see here is on this balancing test, as you talk about the need for the delay in a thorough investigation, against the notion this is really a closed universe of facts in terms of what the families are even asking for, even the bite-sized pieces of what was behind the decision in real time not to enter the classroom. There is a thorough investigation about the overall, maybe systemic issues or other factors, but why not have the answers to the questions of why did you decide not to go in? That's a pretty limited set of facts. It doesn't disrupt the notion of respecting law enforcement.
Yeah, I disagree with you. That takes a lot of time. In other words, I've learned from my case with Scot Peterson. Listen, before I took his case, I was one of the many people who condemned him. I said, oh, they tell me in the media he's a coward, the coward of Broward. He must be. I'm not even going to meet with the guy. Reluctantly, I met with him. And then I did a thorough investigation, and I saw transcripts. I saw what he was saying in real time, asking fellow officers, where's the shooter? I'm hearing him order a code red. I'm hearing him order officers to watch their back, evidencing that he thought maybe there was a sniper. It was completely different than what we were led to believe. So sometimes it looks black and white, and it looks like we can condemn an officer. And that's so unfair to the officer like Scot Peterson, who for 32 years was a decorated officer and did everything he could before, during, and after the shooting to help protect and save lives.
It's interesting because what you are describing as condemnation for many would ask and say it's a question. I mean, there is the idea, and I agree with you. Believe me, as a former prosecutor, I know the value and the beauty of the presumption of innocence and the burden that must be met. At the same token, the condemnation does not equate to asking questions like, can we have the information? I know it will take some time to get the full scope of it, but you must see that there has been some stonewalling and tight-lipped responses that is not really deserving of the families. And I'm just wondering, how long do you think quick ought to be? There's piecemeal and then there's stonewalling. Where should we be right now, 8 days in?
Let me just say that anyone who's stonewalling should not be. They need to be sensitive to these families and the public at large who demand answers. We do want answers. But there's a difference between stonewalling and saying to people, we must do a detailed and thorough investigation. How about speaking to each of the officers? Do you know that in my case, Scot Peterson, they didn't go through and ask him step by step, what were you thinking? Why didn't you go into the building? To this day, they've never done that. They did some quick examination about him being a witness on the Cruz case, but not to ask him, why didn't you go in? If they did, they would realize that he's innocent and being sacrificed. So let's just wait. Let's wait and speak to the officers. Let's look at everything. And then, if there are things that need to be done, that need to be corrected, if there are officers who need to face even criminal charges, we'll get to that. But
Mark,
not a risk of judgment.
Mark, I understand your position and respect your client in particular, but we can both agree that our level of patience and timeline will be different than the families that are grieving today. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
I'm
Mark
sure.
Eiglarsh.
Thank you, Laura. I truly
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And you know, we are more